So that's my building site in Canberra again. So how you see here, there's the pieces of timber in between the trusses, they haven't been there. So if you try to run your Intello just around over the corners of the trusses, it's going to be difficult. First, you won't get it really nice and tight. There's no chance at all. And the next thing is, sooner or later, you're going to penetrate the Intello as well, because it's just rubbing over the corner. So it won't look good. It will be difficult to work with because you can't tape penetrations properly, etc., etc. So the easiest way is just use some offcuts, just staple them. It didn't even use screws. I just staple them into the place. Of course, this stick should be a little bit 1 or 2 mil longer, so you have to read the pressure, staple them, then you will see you're able to create a really nice corner.
Daniel, you're speaking of that timber that is marked with a 3 on it, yeah, and then the staples you have in there. So you're creating this external corner where you can run the membrane over it, and now it has over the whole length of that 90-degree corner support for the membrane. That's what you're saying, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah, and if that is not done, then because we have only now this like 40 millimeter to 60 millimeter wide timber that is rough cut even. So now the membrane would, all force would be on that corner, and that would over time at least.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, perfect.
The next thing is, which I see quite often in Australian passive house building sites, is that you have actually studs, double studs maybe, penetrating the airtightness layer. So especially when you have a suspended ceiling, so the ceiling is coming from one side, it drops down and it moves on, but the studs are going all the way down. How do you seal it? What is the best way? What should you do? I see it quite often. Of course, I came up with a solution. So what you see here, as we have the double studs and we have the single studs as well, but you see the old holes in the studs, which are from the noggings. So in this case, I knocked out the noggins, I lifted them up on the level of the Intello layer, and just fixed them back in, and now you created a nice corner to wrap the Intello around. And you see, I have a joint there, and I stapled the Intello to the studs, actually. And now you're able to tape properly around. If you look to the right of the picture, you see I have a double stud. The only way, there's just one way how to fix it properly, is really drill a hole all the way through. It shouldn't be too big. Then just fill it up with Orcon, and because this is where you can break it down as well. Because these are going to be massive leaks. Just like a liquid adhesive. So Orcon is the Proclaimer liquid adhesive, but you could use something else as well. But I always recommend to stay in the system.
Like the glue that Airboss Dan is now referring to is like called Aircon. That's the Proclaimer product. However, you can't not just use any glue. Like if you're using silicone for that or mastic or something like that, that is not like we learned it back in school. If you've done construction, that a silicone is a service joint. That was banged into our head, at least in Europe. Silicone is a service joint. Silicone is a service joint. So we have to come back to that joint and redo it. Airtightness is not designed that we come back to that joint every few years to redo it. Like in the shower tray, we redo that mastic there or the silicone line there every few years, because otherwise that water tightness is gone. We can't do that with an airtightness system. We really need to make sure that is durable for decades, if not centuries. And for this, the glue needs to stay sticky for a really long time and flexible for a really long time. So if you're having a glue that dries out and then gets brittle and then breaks, it's not working. Or if it's losing its adhesive strength, so it loses the connection between the surfaces and the glue itself, that's not good either. So you can't just use a cheap glue to solve that problem. And the Orcon is one of that glues that is out there on the market that can do that job. Yeah,
it's a system product. It's very important. So if you would use other products which are on the market, then stick with their system, but don't mix up systems. It's always difficult.
So let us maybe stick on that a little bit, like because I think it's a big issue with people trying to find the cheapest products and then combine them in different ways. So they are saying, we really like the Proclaimer tape, but let us use the what's a membrane master? What's it called?
Website WA, for example.
Yeah, so using different membranes with different tapes, that does not necessarily work. Daniel, could you explain why we're having an issue with the different combinations?
Yeah, so there's actually a video from the Canberra Energy Conservatory, I think. And there's a guy who's testing different tapes on the same membrane.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's using a Seeger tape, he's using a Proclaimer tape, I think he's using a Proctor tape or Bradford tape, I can't even remember. So and the thing is that our tapes, for example, and other tapes that didn't stick very well to the Bradford membrane. That's quite easy because everyone has different systems. So if maybe you worked with the Bradford tape before, they have a lot of glue. So the Proctor tape, the Bradford tape is very, very sticky, extremely sticky. But the membrane itself is a very low surface energy surface. So it's easy if you touch the membrane, the surface is not very sticky at all. So that's why they use a lot of glue to get a good adhesion with the product. Like the products we're using a low amount of glue, because if you have really less glue, you create a better adhesion and a better strength in the product. Because if you have a lot of glue, it means like if you have a lot of honey, and if you have a lot of honey, then you really see you can tear the honey apart more or less. But if you have less glue, which means you have more cohesion, so the inner strength is higher. So the right way to do the test is to test our tapes with our membranes, the Seeger tapes with Seeger membranes, and the Bradford tapes with Bradford membranes. So this is the best way how to do it.
May I translate that a little bit, because there was a lot of adhesive and like a lot of tech stuff. So we're having membranes.
Such a nerd.
Yeah. So we're having we have membranes. They have not a really strong surface strength. And now to get that connection between the tape and the membrane, it needs a lot of glue so that glue can go into the surface deeper and deeper and deeper and have a stronger connection. So this is the reason we're having systems where we have a lot of glue on the tape, but because the membrane that is used is not really like tear resistance in a way. So what happens if you use that system in combination and you try to peel off that tape? Now all the fibers are pulled out of that membrane because it goes into the membrane, and there is some tear, there is some resistance, there is some strength on it, because that's the way it's designed. The problem with a lot of glue is now that honey effect that Dan just explained, is that when we're having a really deep glue level, then we're having a honey effect, so it can move a little bit. And now what happens, soon there's a little bit of strength on that glue joint. It could be that it starts moving. So if you've worked on airtight constructions already, you sometimes see on the top of the tape or at the bottom of the tape a little gray line where the adhesive of the tape is, and that's that movement that happens when there's too much strength on that joint. And now the other option is, that's what the Proclaimer and Seeger system is. They're using a really thin layer of glue on a really strong membrane. And now we don't have so much problem with that adhesive, that we have that honey effect. And it is not a strong connection immediate. So the deep glue connection has a strong connection really quickly. The Seeger and Proclaimer systems are designed to have a strong connection over a really long time. So it needs some time to get that strength. So like if you've done a demonstration of Proclaimer tapes before, then you know that actually the tape is already really strong when you put a lot of force on it, but this strength is even getting enforced over a 24-hour period. So if you put the tape on and put it off, you don't see that strength with a low glue amount compared to a deep glue amount. So maybe that makes it a bit easier to understand with these layman terms that I try to use.
Let's move on with here, because I just have to say something to here as well. I think one of the best tips I can give you, because before you tape, especially on this picture, you see that the membrane is stapled carefully to the spot where you're going to tape it later on. Yeah. And I think that's one of the best tips I can give you today, because really the person who staples the membrane to the spot has the biggest responsibility, because you prepare the surface for the person after you who's taping it. So it could be the biggest idiot are behind you, but you can't do anything wrong because you prepared everything already. So that's really kind of staple carefully. Use as many staples as you need because that's the cheapest part of the system. I always use a pneumatic staple gun, which you're going to see on the next pictures. But staple the membrane to the spot and then tape over. If you have floppy parts, it's always a pain in the ass and it's always having problems because you will never ever create enough pressure to stick the tape properly to the surface.
Okay.